Hello and welcome everybody to Artisan Mentoring, where we talk everything that is piano craft, tuning, repairs, regulation, jigs, running your own piano servicing business. I'm your host today. My name is David, and we do this 3 times a week where we just have a sit-down time where we just get to geek out and talk about the business, talk about repairs, talk about horror stories, and just what we can do to elevate our craft. And so today's lesson is going to be on a regulation jig, specifically the let-off jig. And I have to admit that this is one that I think that I came in a little bit later on in my career to using jigs. My mentor was a little bit more old school, and that he wanted like everything done in the piano and you have to do it really quick. You don't need a jig. So it wasn't until a little bit later that I started using certain jigs, and this is one of them. This one is pretty old school. I think somebody made this back in the day. Maybe not. Maybe you can still order this. But they all kind of look like this. And what it is it really is here to simulate where the strings are. And this is really great, especially if you're rebuilding a piano or if you're taking a piano action back to your shop, like I have with this one behind me, and you need to do some regulation work. The thing that you need to remember in using the jigs is sometimes, all the time, don't ever think that what you're doing with the jig is going to be just perfect when you set it in the piano. That doesn't always happen. In fact, a lot of times that doesn't happen. You can be setting everything right to the jigs and you're like, okay, this is just dialed in. And you go and slide the action into the piano and you'll have blocking hammers because maybe there's a key bed issue, maybe there's something going on. So I like using these jigs, these let-off jigs, as kind of a baseline. Kind of gets me in the ballpark, gets me somewhat close, in fact. But know that going into everything that I'm about to show you, because I would hate for you to be like getting into the position where you got it into the piano and you're like, David, you lied to me. Not gonna lie to you. This is something that even if you set everything right with the jig, there is a little bit of a variance that can happen when you slide it in the piano. That being said, this let-off jig is fairly basic. The basic concept is that you have from the floor to the string. And so when you go and set your measurements, you're going to go ahead and get these measurements from the piano. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's several ways of doing it. The normal way that most people will do this is they'll use some kind of a gauge, or in my case, I like to use a fairly thick cardstock like this. And what I do is, let's just say this is the piano. You will slide the action out. And then you can see here we have the strings, right? You see the dampers are touching the strings. You will slide your paper, because you'll have access to the cavity of the piano, right? You'll have access to all of this. You'll be able to see the strings. You slide your paper shim all the way down so that it's touching the floor. And then right where you see that string touching it, go ahead and scroll a line. You're going to do this for the first and last of each section. So string number 1, or note number 1, string number 1, and string number 26. You're going to get these measurements and you're going to go right at the bottom of the string and scroll a line. Questions about that so far? While I drink water. I'm trying this new thing where I actually drink water throughout the day. Game changer. Apparently you're supposed to do that. Scroll your line, first and last of each section. Don't assume, never assume that you're like, okay, this one's right next to the break. I'm sure it's the same. No, I'm always amazed. I'll go ahead and set my sample. Obviously I know that the bass and the treble are going to be different, but sometimes I'll get to this point, I'm like, oh, I'm sure it's going to be close. It can be off by 1/4 inch, those string heights. So be sure, and you can label them, measurement 1 through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1 through 8 in this action would have 8 measurements, basically each of the breaks. But once you have this, then you can get started. I'm trying to think if I want to share the next thing. Yeah, I'll do that right now. If you don't want to do this technique, again, this technique is really great, especially if you're going to be replacing the parts, if you're going to be replacing hammers, because you're going to save this, you're going to put this in the customer, the action, tape it to it, you have this to go off of. If you're not going to be replacing the hammers or not doing any major surfacing, I like this other trick. Can anybody guess what the other trick is? Be bold. Stacy, what is the other trick?
I don't know. I don't know.
I didn't know it either until somebody told me. And they're like looking at me like, right, scrolling this, and they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh man, I'm getting this just precise. And they're like, why don't you just set the let off for the first and last of each section? What? Yeah, set the let off for first and last of each section so it's right where you want it to be. Mind blown. What that does is it makes it so that now I can get my piano action out of the way, so that my first and last are set to just the right let off. And what I do then is I move this so that it's roughly 1/8 above where that let off is. Does that make sense? At least nod your head if it makes sense. I can't see or can't.
Yes.
Good, good, it makes sense. So that's an easy way of doing it, assuming that nothing else is gonna change. It's not a bad idea to do this as well, maybe kind of like double it up and do both, but that is definitely a simpler way of doing it. Just set your let off to the first and last of each hammer. Okay? Well, David, what can I do now that I've done that? Well, let me show you. I've already set this to that spec. I've gotten my, what's it called? My little jig thing, or not my little template. So I set this to the right height. And so now I can quickly go through using my upright regulation tool, go through and quickly regulate my let off so that it's going just right. And you can see how fast this is. If any of you have ever done let off in the piano, you know it's kind of a deal. Takes a little while. So I'm already this far through it, and it's that easy. So typically what I'll do is I don't want to change this yet, so I'll go through my let off. I'll go through using my drop screw driver. I'll go through and do my drop. And then what other thing would I do right here? Give me a couple examples. What else can I do while I have it?
You can do back checking.
Yeah, flip the action and do back checks.
You actually don't even need to flip it. You can just go through this and still get to it. But yes, you can totally do back checking. Another thing that you can do is roughen your hammer line, right? Get your blow distance what it needs to be. It's a pretty slick setup, and it works really pretty well for the most part. Now, that being said, you will find that at times, like, man, I slid it in and it is just off. I need to fix that. So I need to adjust it a little bit. But overall, you're able to get it in the ballpark using this jig. You just have to be pretty precise on the template that you use, or making sure that you have the let off set just right for your samples. But again, I love using this if something is so far out of regulation, like I put new parts on. This is a great first step to going through and just establishing your basic regulation. Now, I've seen these, and I'm not sure, Michael, you might have seen these as well. It's like a $10,000 regulation bench.
I've not seen that one.
Is it hydraulic too? Like
the full Monte by GrandWorks.
I knew you'd know it, Cobra. I knew you would know it.
That's for 12,000.
12,000. It's gone up.
Coburn's gonna get it one day, huh? You know you are.
In the Alien franchise movie, there's one of them where they have this pod thing that you can go inside and it like does all these medical procedures with these arms and stuff. It reminds me of that. It's like super techy, sophisticated with these arms and these adjustments. That's what it reminds me of. But that's a lot of money. This will do kind of, how should I say this? I can't be like, hey, buy this $100 jig and it's just as good as the $12,000 thing. I'm not going to assume that or anything. I just know that over the last 25 years, this is what I've been using and it served me well. I think they're available at Schaff. I'm guessing they're no more than a couple $100. I could be wrong, but they're not that expensive. And it's just another nice tool to have that it's definitely worth experimenting with and seeing what you like about it and what you don't like. Again, make sure that when you do, drop that jig, or not that jig, but get your measurements, use a slightly firmer cardstock. Make sure it's long enough because you want to be able to drape that down in between the strings. Scroll the line where the string is. Be sure to do your first and last of each section. I did that once where I don't know what I was thinking. It was early on. And I just did the first, like the bass one, and then I went and did the high treble one. And I'm like, I didn't even know what I was thinking. Then I left the customer's house and I get to my bench and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get started. And I'm like, wait, what in the world was I thinking? So the other trick is, like I said, set your let off and make sure that it goes and do your first and last in each section. That way you can really establish what this height should be. Now, when you are setting the height, I'm assuming, maybe somebody can look into this, I'm assuming the jigs nowadays still look fairly similar to this. Can anybody confirm that?
It's similar. I'll share my screen here real quick and you can see what it looks like.
Yeah,
It's not wood. It's not like wood, but it's still.
Yeah, it's a metal structure instead of wood.
I'm wondering if Howard sells the wooden ones. Howard seems like a place that would sell the wooden ones, but these are what I've seen even up till recently, something along these lines, and this has several adjustments. One is you have these wing nuts up here that will do a really precise, adjustment. And then you also have this right here that's like a two-part bracket that will lower. So you can kind of just get the general and then you can refine it right here with these adjustments. A lot of times technicians will put like a weights on here to make sure that it doesn't move because it can be kind of floppy, as you can see. But again, simple tool, a nice tool to have. It's not something that I use very often now that we don't do a ton of rebuilding work, but we were using this quite a bit because, again, it's really nice if you're rebuilding a piano from the ground up, because guess what? You can get your string measurements and then send it off to our restringing department, and in the meantime, our action department is using something like this to emulate where the strings are while it's getting restrung. So by the time everything comes together, the action team is rebuilding the action using the jig, and so they're able to slide it in and have it be probably 90% there, I would say. And so then they're just doing that final adjustment. Coburn, is this a jig that you have down there in Denver?
I haven't used that before. I think one thing that would be good to mention is when doing back checking is to have little like triangle wooden wedges to lift up the front of the key frame, so that way your key dip can match on the bench as it does in the piano.
Good point. That's a really good point. So you're saying that on the front end, having it just, you could probably even use rubber mutes, right? And just space them out correctly. So that is a good point. It is a good idea. This is kind of that extra measure to make sure it's just right. Is make sure that it's at a roughly 10 millimeter dip. Or if it's not, if it's way deeper, figure out what that dip is so that you can emulate it on your own workbench. Again, by like what Coburn said, shimming up that front so that you're getting just that right amount of key dip. Great point, Coburn.
And I think that's one of the key things with the $12,000 GrandWorks is that you take all the measurements before, then you adjust all the little spots of adjustment on the actual bench with all its little arms and whatnot, and then that way you're not having to put little wooden or rubber shims and then have them possibly move around.
Yeah. So instead, what you can do is instead of spending maybe $3 on rubber mutes, you can get the $12,000 table and make sure you don't have to do that, right? Because you don't want to move them. I'm playing. Sorry, whoever built the bench, I would love to see it demoed and make a believer out of me. So let's connect sometime because I would love to see it because it looks really cool. And
it's Chris Brown.
Chris Brown.
Yeah.
I want to see it. I want to play with it. Send me one. Just send me one, and I'll play around with it. No guarantee you'll get it back, but just send it to us. Questions about this, about bench regulation. So this is kind of along those lines of what we term bench regulation. So there's a regulation in the piano, and then there's bench regulation. You've brought the action to the shop like here. You want to get a good handle on it, and so this is a jig that you will use for bench regulation, really.
Thing along with the wedges is just to have a solid bench top that's not going to flex.
This is not the bench top to use. This is like a reclaimed wood one where they're all off-centered. Even here, I'm like, ugh. So yeah, a nice solid bench. Like Coburn says, make sure that thing is solid and flat.
As far as how often are you using that let-off jig now that you're not doing, full restorations in the shop for the most part? Because I know you're kind of focusing on stuff in the piano at the customer's home right now.
You know what? I've been burned enough where I go and slide the action in, and it's so frustrating where I'm like, oh, I spent time to get it going and it's not there. I would say what I would do is if I'm doing a full, like what we call a gold package, where we're going to go ahead and re-regulate everything, where we're shaping the hammers, getting a better shape. Sometimes, we're taking off more mass, and I really want to save some time in the home. I'll definitely do this because it does save time inside the piano and in home, because if I'm able to get 90% there, as you saw with that regulation, that let off and that drop, yes, that's good. I haven't used it in a while, and if I'm 100% honest, right until about 5 minutes before we started this class, I couldn't find it, and I found it. So I'll probably use it again some more.
So if you were pulling the action, if you were replacing all the felts in the key bed, resetting key height, key dip, you would more than likely be using that to reset your hammer line and
100%.
And everything.
100%, yeah. And if I'm replacing hammers, totally doing that. Yes, no, that's absolutely true. Because my thing is I want to minimize the amount of time I'm in my customer's house. I do. I don't. If I'm having a service professional in my house, I don't want them in there for very long. I just want them in, out, get out, go. Thanks. Here's your money. I'm finding that as polite as our technicians are, as nice as the experience is, they don't want us there all day or 2 days or 3 days in a row. I was at a customer's house the other day. It was a great experience, but I was there for 7.5 hours. And I think by the end of it, we were just like, oh, let's get out of here. Get out of here. Because that's a long time. So when you're able to cut that time down by using a jig like this, I think everybody's that much happier. And when I talk to people and they're like, okay, so you're going to take the action like I have here, and then you're going to bring it back and you're only going to spend a couple hours in the home. Yeah, but we're going to be doing a lot of work in the shop doing bench regulation. It's that kind of stuff. And then they're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So don't get hung up on like, I need to spend 8 hours in the home. That way they can see that I'm actually doing the work and they get to see that they're getting their money's worth. No. Do the bench regulation, list it down. You can list what you're doing, list that you're using the regulation jig. But people are usually okay when they understand, like, okay, yeah, that does make sense. Of course, he's not going to do it all right here. He's going to do all the preliminary. That's what I call it. I do a lot of preliminary work or bench regulation. Most people understand the idea of preliminary work more than bench regulation. Robert, where can I catch you up on?
Well, I'll watch it. I'm sorry I'm late. I had my very first worry-free guarantee callback tonight. So he said, hey, can you be here Wednesday at 6? I've got a group of keys that are sticking. And I thought, I think I know what this is. And I'm on my way there. I'm going, please be a pencil. Please be a pencil. It was a pencil. So
that's a big win, Robert. Big win.
Boom, boom. Yeah. He thought I was a genius. It's like, said, here's your culprit right here. They're in the middle. The kid had their first lesson, left the pencil in and out of there. One of those that makes up for all the losses, even though how simple it was.
Robert, that's fantastic.
Talk about making your customer feel great that you're able to solve the problem.
He was excited, and I was in and out, and I didn't do paperwork. Just 5 minutes. I've already done the invoice. Hey, this was it. Have a nice dinner. I was cooking dinner. So anyhow, it was
Robert, that's the best. Yeah. I'm so happy.
I hope they're all like that, but I don't think it'll be that way. But at least, I could say I've had one under my belt.
It's good to start out with a win.
Yeah.
The thing that I've found, because we've been doing the peace of mind guarantees for the last 15 years, I would say overwhelmingly so. When you go back to do a peace of mind or a warranty one, you've won a customer for life. Absolutely. The fact that you went there and didn't charge, fixed, and it was even their issue, huge. You're going to have that customer for life, and they're going to tell 5 to 10 other people about that over time. So it's worth it in the long run. I was telling one of our technicians, because it was yesterday, he was like, hey, I'm coming back for a warranty thing, but it's really not our fault. It's this other issue that's broken. I'm like, okay, I would charge this, but if the customer if you get a sense that they feel like maybe, even though it's not our fault, that they don't want to pay, or they think that's unreasonable, comp it, no charge. We're in it for the long haul, and I guarantee you, with that long haul mindset, you will be taken care of in the long haul. And so in this case, the customer's like, yeah, could we split the difference? And we're like, sure. Again, we're going to do it for free. So it's no problem.
And just on the receiving end, because I'm the one that gets the calls, they always are so uncomfortable to call. There's a few that are like, hey, but it's really rare. Usually they're like, hey, they're just so uncomfortable calling. And when you're like, I'm glad you called. I'm glad you told us. We're going to just come right out and take care of it. They're just like, oh, thank you. They're just like, I feel this relief. Because they're like, they don't know how. It's uncomfortable for most customers to say, there's something wrong, and guys are just here, and it's like clicking or buzzing, or it's hard for them. So I don't know. I'm like always proud of them for like speaking up, because if they don't, they'll hold a grudge about it. So we don't want that. So I love our peace of mind stuff. I love it.
I actually think that might be worth doing a full lesson on, is how to approach, as a technician, going back to an upset customer, because there's literally a rhythm to it. There's a philosophy and a rhythm to it. I was fortunate enough when I was working at Classic Pianos, I got to be that guy for whatever reason. They would send me all over if there was a piano that got delivered and there was some issue and they were irate. I would go and try to calm the situation and make everything better. And so I learned that there's actually a rhythm, a system, and things that you can do that de-escalate it very easily and efficiently to where everybody's just thrilled by the end of the day. And so that might be a future lesson, because that you will, just like Robert experienced, you will get callbacks, you will get upset customers, and you need to know some of the things that are very easy to do and easy to understand that will make 99 out of 100 go just swimmingly.
Right. And it's so easy to flip it around. It really doesn't take much at all to just flip them to where they're like, oh, we love Artisan. So yeah, there is a rhythm to it, isn't there? Like yeah.
Questions. I'm here for questions now. Now that we've talked about the jig. Victor, you missed an amazing jig talk, but you can watch it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Which jig is it?
Sorry, you got to rewind. No.
I looked all over online, Victor, and I
He was
find it.
doing the Saint Anne reel, jig, Irish dance,
Yeah, I can't. I can't find the wooden ones either.
Really?
The only one I can find is the metal ones. Yeah. So you can't find them either, Stacy?
I looked for 15 minutes on like 8 websites. So I mean, I didn't like really look, but I looked.
I'll talk to Mark about it. Mark at Supply 88, because I don't know. I like the design of these. I've seen the metal ones. I don't know.
A lot of people don't like those. I hear they're too light.
Yeah, they're too light.
That's what I hear. Yeah, even though they're more accurate, I think, because they have a lot more adjustments. I hear they're too light, and it's really hard to get them to weigh them down so that they don't move when you strike it, if you do that.
Coburn said that he was going to buy me for like a Christmas present that $12,000 regulation workbench, Victor. So, yeah, have you heard about that?
Oh, there you go. I'm going to put that on my wish list, too, the GrandWorks.
GrandWorks. That's what it's called, Coburn? GrandWorks? Yeah, okay.
So David, I don't know whether you saw my, when I went out thinking that it was going to be a string repair on the grand at this church, and it was the Agraffe that was broken. So I get the fun job of removing an Agraffe. So I've had to buy one of the extractors and stuff. So I've got that, and I head over there next week to do that. Any recommendations? I assume that if you were to do that, you would pull the action so that the action isn't underneath stuff, and then be able to clean up afterwards.
Here's my process. Definitely pull the action out. I don't use the easy outs. What I do is I get a series of drill bits. So hopefully it's sheared fairly flush. It's a pain if it's sheared in a rounded way. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, it's kind of sideways. I don't have it. Do I have it near me? No, I don't have it close to me right now. But yeah, so it's if you think about where the head of the Agraffe is, it actually broke down inside a little bit. So when the Agraffe popped up, it had a sliver that went down in, and a small sliver that it's on basically flush. So it kind of broke in an angle.
So what I do is I typically, assuming you're going to need a drill, hand drill, obviously, but I get metal bits, and so I'll go ahead and do a really fine, like I'm talking a 16th inch drill bit, and I'll use that and try to go as center as I can, and I'll start with that one. If I can try to get that one started, get it going down, and then I'll usually go to about maybe a maybe a next level up, but I won't go all the way down. And then I'll pull it out. And what I'll do is I have a fine, small, thin, almost like an eyeglass flathead screwdriver. I tap it in, and then I unthread it. And
so you're creating a slot essentially.
Yes.
For the screwdriver, is what you're trying to do.
And then I just unscrew it up. And that I found works better because when I'm doing the easy out, I've only been able to successfully do that a handful of times. But every time I use this other method where I literally tap that flathead screwdriver in there and I unthread it, I just pull it out and it works every time.
Okay.
Victor, have you ever had one of those guys break on you?
No, but my mentor taught me that method though. I recommend using like a center punch to just poke a hole in the middle so that your drill bit doesn't walk on you.
Yeah, that's a good point because that is a fairly soft material, that brass. So it will make that. That's a good point. That's a really good point, Victor.
Yeah, because that way you create a spot for the drill to bite into by using the punch. Yeah, that makes sense.
No, document it. I want to know how it goes.
I'm going to try to record the process so that
Yeah.
I'll be able to post it. So I'm interested to see how I do on this.
One time I was able to salvage, is it in the base of the treble?
It is right in the middle of the treble. So it's on the, it's basically just before you get to the high treble where it's a V bar. So so it's D sharp 4, no, D sharp 5. So it's like one note before the strut.
I was able to salvage and pull the strings one time to where I was able to salvage all 3 strings. And they didn't have as many coils, right? Because that Beckett obviously broke. But usually, I mean, you're replacing all 3 of those strings.
Yeah, I'm replacing all of them because when that broke, the bend in that wire, with it popping up, because the strings didn't break, the strings were still there. And I posted an image, within the feed. But yeah, I'm planning on replacing them. So
yeah.
So once I get the Agraffe removed, get the new one installed, then it'll be replacing 2 pairs of strings.
So one thing whenever you're replacing an Agraffe, there's a couple things to consider when you're actually putting the Agraffe back in. And they make a tool for this. And I don't know if you've seen that's able to shear off the bottom of that Agraffe. Have you seen that?
No, I've not seen that.
So basically, there's 2 things you can do because you want to make sure that when you're tightening it, not only is there a tool that grabs on and...
I have the tool to be able to seat it. And I was also talking to one of the other techs here in Indy. He was, talking about, okay, you hand tighten it, then how much do you tighten by hand to seat it? So, and he was recommending about a 1/4 turn to ensure that it's fully tight.
It's right, but what happens when that 1/4 turn makes it so that it's tight, but it's off to the side? That's the kicker. And so what you do is you have 2 options. One is you can buy, and I do recommend this, they sell little washers with the Agraffe. So you can order some of these little washers. That way hey, when I tighten this all the way down, I might have to shim it up a little bit because I want that to tighten just at the right angle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The other thing is there's a tool, and it basically you put it, you put the stem of the Agraffe down in there, and then because the tool is hollow in the center, but has these blades on the top, and you will literally shear off some of the bottom side of the Agraffe where it sits in the plate.
Oh, I'm with you. You're shaving off where the Agraffe sits flush. Yeah.
And that's another tool that, again, that's one that we as rebuilders will use a lot. Because, again, you want that to be right in line with the others. So, again, there's a tool for everything. You can get away with just the washers for sure. Because I think that tool is kind of expensive.
Yeah, and I don't even see it here on Shaft. It's probably on here somewhere, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, it's probably in the stringing area somewhere, like with the Agraffe. Yeah. So yeah, the Agraffe stuff is fun. It's fun when you're done with it and you look at it. I'm like, yeah, I did that. But it is a sweat and bullets job until you get to that point.
Yeah. So I got my work cut out for me for next Tuesday.
Yeah, it'll be good. You're gonna do it. Just visualize it coming together, and you'll be set.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. I also found a couple of good examples on YouTube where somebody video recorded them doing the removal, which was invaluable for me to look at.
Yeah, just to see that done. That's cool.
So yeah, hopefully I can get a good recording. I'm going to take my tripod with me, and I'm going to try to record it. The time lapse of everything. So we can get
that would be cool.
Get an example of it, and then also the restringing, so that see how I do. It's been a while since I've done a string, so I'll have to practice over the weekend with my coils. Coil practice.
Practice. And does everybody have a good stringing kit? Again, highly recommend Mark and Don over at Supply 88 with their stringing kits. I've tried just about every stringing kit out there, and theirs is by far just chef's kiss. It's just perfect. So big fan of theirs if you don't already have one. Yeah. I'm going to talk to Mark about this though, because I think he could make these and make them back in the what they used to be, where they have more. They're more rigid. They're sturdier. Mark,
I did put a link, and I found one. I don't know that website. I don't know how legit the website is. So order at your own risk.
Is it like Temu?
I don't know. It's something weird. I couldn't read it. It was in cursive, but I put it in there.
It's from a website called Aliens and Strange, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is a picture of it. I mean, that is, you found it. I don't know.
How much is it?
$80.
Hey, that's not bad.
No, it's not. It says it's 60% off. That's another kind of red flag.
Yeah, I wonder.
Just email us your birth certificate and we'll send it to you, huh?
Why would they name a company Aliens and Strange? I mean, for piano, I don't know. Maybe they sell all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, so going back to the jigs, I'm a big fan of the let-off jig. It does really allow you to do less work, more work on the bench, get that preliminary work done so that you're spending less time in the customer's house. But just know that it may not all line up. But if you do some of the stuff like double check your measurements, even, get your measurements on just a simple piece of paper like this. I like to use cardstock. So you're going to go the first and last in each section. You're going to mark where the string is at. You're also going to go ahead and set your let off to the first and last of each section. And then to Coburn's point, go ahead and when you actually have your action on the bench, do make sure that this is up or down to the level where you can actually get a good dip. And so that would be another thing to check in the home on the piano. Hey, what's the dip at? Okay, good. It's right around 10 millimeters. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm able to achieve that on my bench. And you'll be able to get a fairly decent regulation. You'll be able to do your back checking, blow distance, let off, drop, and really get that, again, that preliminary stuff done so you don't have to spend as much time in the customer's house.
I have a question, David. I know you like to do the let off in the piano. I've been trying to do that more and more. I just have trouble, especially in the very high treble, like the last section, trying to see where the hammer is. It's hard to see like how close that hammer is getting to the string. Do you have any tips for trying to like visualize that better? Or are there certain angles to see that better?
I'm always using my right hand for what I guess that could be different from right to lefty. And I'm usually kind of looking at it on the right hand side on that angle, and I'm close to it. And I'm actually looking really close, and I see it, and then I make that happen. To be honest, I usually have a harder time in the bass. Have the dampers hindering your view of it. And so sometimes I'll sit on the ground and I'll look kind of up through the cavity where I can see. That's another way of kind of that cheap way.
That's true. I forgot about that.
But that's another way you can at least get some of those bass notes figured out. Another thing that you can do, especially in the bass, is go ahead and set one that you know is just right. A let off. What's going on with my action here? Set a let off in one of the bass notes, and then just go through and just kind of hit it lightly. Go through let off to where it barely, you're going to hear it hit the string ever so slightly, right? You're going to go through and it'll go pop and touch the string. Make that same tone, that same amount of volume every other one. Just do it by listening.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought about that.
Concert technician showed me that. He's like, I don't even look, man. The dude was insane, awesome. And so he would go through and just listen. He'd be like, yep, 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 yep. And he'd do the same amount of force, and he would just know.
I like that idea.
Yeah, so practice.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
I've got,
I also see. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Two alternatives for let off particularly, and one of our other techs, Alan, up in Seattle, just went to Jim Busby's class up in I think Olympia or Tacoma, and it's the same idea. Jim Busby uses a stick, whereas this Leroy Edwards jig is two sticks together with an adjustable spring-loaded fastener on each end, and then on the grand piano you just you rest it against the resting hammers, and it's going to be at an angle. You adjust the let off for the hammers at the beginning of the section, at the end of the section, and then you put all the hammers on top of it except for the ends, so that way it can actually sit on 4 hammer shanks, 2 on one side, 2 on the other, and then whenever you're doing let off, the hammer should just barely wink.
They should barely wink
off of the top, and you can hear it drop back onto the top of this with just a small little click. The alternative is this Tautline tool, Tautline, and it's got these little brackets. You screw them, you unscrew the action brackets screws, and then you put this down, screw them back in, one on one end of a section, one on the other end of the section, and in between you tighten the string and get it to the proper height to for hammer blow distance or let off or drop.
You set a sample first and last in the piano there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I thought it's really cool. Coburn showed me that once. I think it was you, Coburn, that showed me that. And it's like a little tightrope, right? It's like a little tightrope.
And it's nice because that Tautline one, the tightrope, you can just put it in the tool case and it fits
it's easy.
in your hand. It's really small.
What Coburn just showed you is essentially what this is. So again, setting your let off first and last using, what's it called? The Tautline?
Yes, Tautline.
Yeah, Tautline. Where can we get it?
Let's see. Where's that? It's been ages since I've ordered. I think it was Piano Tech. So now it's probably on Shaft.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. No, I like. They're both great suggestions. Forget Jim.
Actually, it might even be on Vanda King.
What's that?
It might even be on Vanda King.
Okay. Yeah. Those guys create some cool stuff.
Victor, I've also seen people use a mirror.
Let off?
Yeah, like or I don't know if they're using it for let off, but I've seen they kind of put a mirror behind the dampers, and the mirror's kind of angled down, pointing at the strings. Is that do some people use that for let off as well, or what is that for?
That's actually not for let off. That is to make sure that the dampers are lifting just the right amount. Thumbs up. And so you're able to see, hey, which one is lifting first, which one is lifting, angled a little bit up or down. That's what that's for.
Oh, so see if they're lifting the same time front to back?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep, that's what that technique is for. Good questions today. Oh. Yeah, all these.
Can I ask a damper question?
Do it.
Real quick. It's an upright damper. So have you ever bent this wire? Because the damper is not, it's making contact with the string, but not enough, because it's an old 1914 damper that's as hard as a piece of wood. And I've kind of replaced a few of them. Have you ever bent this wire to push it tighter toward the strings, even though I've taken the action out? And I don't want to just make it to where the top is pressing more, but both of them. Is that an adjustment to make? Just
So two things. First off, yes, it is an adjustment to make, but before you do that, one of the things you're going to need to do is try to make it so that the distance between that damper felt that you're using, the new damper felt, is the same thickness. So I'm noticing right there with your damper felt, it looks a little thinner. And so
this is a different damper.
okay.
This is just an example. This is the original. So yeah, it is thicker, and most of them will dampen if I, push it a little more. But my B naturals are just ringing out. So if you play a C chord and you hear those overtones, oh my gosh, it just sounds such a dissonance. So this is my $300 never-ending job. I did all the bridle straps. I put it back in, and you still have these dampers. Of course, it's a 1914. I said, okay, this is sort of my learning experience. I'm not going to charge any more than what I said, but I want to try and get these dampers to work so he can at least play it without just an echo of half steps in your ear.
So what I would recommend, Robert, instead of bending that wire just yet, I would remove that felt that you put on there, razor blade it off, and add a little bit more felt, maybe some red backing felt, so that it's gonna push itself against that string. Does that make sense?
Yeah, push the felt closer instead of the actual head closer.
Exactly, because then we
because you're thickening the amount of felt essentially, even though you're not adding felt, you're actually putting it in between.
Exactly. And so then you'll be able to also see, because if I'm guessing, if you looked at all your dampers, if you leaned the action back and looked at the dampers, that one that you just were showing me that with the new felt, I'm guessing it's a 1/16 of an inch closer to you. It's maybe there's, it's not the same as the others. So by adding some of that backer felt, you're bringing it to the level of the others and will eliminate as much of that bending that you don't want to do.
Okay, well, you just added some time to the job, but that's okay. I was thinking, I was going to whack this way, and it'll just kind of press a little harder when you
can, and
it's never as easy as it. Okay, that makes sense though. Because there's probably a dozen notes like this. It's not just onesie twosies. So the damper pedal works, but the individual notes do not reset. So middle C just rings out. B natural rings out. But G closes it fine. So, that's just the way, just age. I told him your dampers are they're old. They're like a hunk of wood trying to dampen it. So
make sure that the dampers are also not being they're not hanging up by those spoons. That's what I had in my service call today. The spoon was making it. I'm going to go grab an upright action model to kind of show you really quick, okay? All right. I'm going to show you this right here because this happens fairly often. Let's do this. All right. You'll get to doing everything that you're doing. Yeah, let's look at right here. So I'm going to barely touch this key right here and watch that damper. That damper is moving as soon as I even touch this key, because look at that right there. That spoon is touching that lever right away. When should that spoon touch the lever? Give me somebody to answer that.
the third.
Somebody said, what did you say?
halfway the hammer travels to the string.
About halfway. That's a good way. So, Robert, the reason I'm saying that is it could be ringing out because that spoon is holding that lever off.
Okay. Right here.
Yep,
Right.
right
Pushing
there.
it out. Okay.
So go ahead and adjust that spoon by pulling it back towards you. And the easiest tool to do that with, and I say easiest tool because it's never that easy, this guy right here. Simply go through, feed it through up there. What was that, Victor?
You said simply. I was like, yeah. Like if it was only so simple. Simply go through.
Well, and I've had to, like, in the last couple appointments, I'm like pulling my hair back. I'm like, wow, I guess this is like I have to like wear a hairnet or something because I'm like doing it like this damper work today. I'm like, so yeah, it's easier with shorter hair too.
Well, the action's out. It's on the workbench, so I know I can't really test it in real time. But I see what you're saying.
You'll be able to tell. You'll be able to tell if it's something's off because I don't have an upright action. 1 second.
Okay, sorry to get in the weeds. Has anyone fluffed? I've got a little needling tool, fluffed out the dampers, you know, to try and expand them. Victor,
I've
you ever
done that.
done
I've done that when I can't figure it out and I just want to get out of there. It'll last a few minutes till I'm gone.
that?
So you have the action out, right, Robert, like this?
Yes. It's got the long
Let's just-
stickers. It's an old one.
Yeah. Let's just say one of these is off. I've just bent one of these spoons and look at that one. You see how that one is lower?
Yeah.
So
I've got several like that, so they're not even. I bet you
They're
it may
not?
be a spoon issue. Yeah. They all stick out
so that might be.
Yeah, they look like hillbilly teeth. I mean, they're all just sticking out at odd angles.
I like that. They look like hillbilly teeth. That's awesome. Well, I think it wouldn't be about Robert's $300 repair. I love it.
Yeah. I have a question, David. Do you know anybody? Because my mentor's like this, and he's like the only person I've met that's like this. He's like super anti bending spoons. Like anytime I even mention it, like he hates the idea of bending spoons. Have you ever met anybody that's just like kind of like advises against it?
I mean, I'm against it in that I don't like doing it, but it's
Uh-huh.
like kind of like I don't know. There's
I
really no other way of doing it. Like
Yeah, to him, it's because he's like, I guess because he's always talked about it like, he's like, oh, people bend spoons just to try to fix a problem, even though that's not the solution. He thinks that the only reason you should bend a spoon is because somebody bent it before you. That somebody messed with it. The only reason that you're bending spoons is because somebody messed it up, not because it naturally just happened to get bent or something. Have you found that that's true? Because like I don't think I've ever seen like been able to bend a spoon just like by pushing the key over and over again.
you're not gonna get me. Yeah, I want to get in trouble with your mentor. I have found that the reason I'm bending spoons is not because another technician has done something, because most technicians don't even know how to bend spoons.
Oh, that's true.
It's really wear and tear. Because what's happening? That damper lever has a felt that is touching, and that spoon is constantly wearing that down to the point where it needs to be adjusted. There isn't. I guess if you're meant saying, hey, yeah, no, I like to go ahead and remove all those damper levers and put on new felt. I can see that, but that takes a 5-minute spoon replacement to a 1-day job. So
That's true. Yeah, I've always got on about it. Yeah.
Another thing with that is whenever you shim up the hammer rest rail and then raise all the capstans, when you're doing that, you're lifting up all the whippings, so the spoon is actually hitting the damper lever a little bit more. Anytime you shim up the hammer rest rail and adjust the capstans, it's changing the placement of the spoons from what they were before.
That's true.
Totally.
Yeah. I always make fun of him because I'm like, man, what's your problem with spoons? Like, he gets like real defensive about it. I'm okay with doing it, but I've just always wondered if there's anybody else out there that's like against it.
No, I've not heard of that. Obviously, there's a backstory with spoons. Somehow spoons hurt him, and we need to get to the bottom of this. There it is.
Yeah, I did see him eating a cereal with the fork the other day, so maybe he just doesn't use spoons in general.
Yeah, I would say my first mentor was really all about, like, he would have me spend a week just doing spoons, and I got to the point where I was able to do it with either hand, ambidextrous, and I'm able to do spoons in about 5 minutes for a whole upright piano. So, like, practicing it really makes a difference. And spoons is one of those ones where I can guarantee you, I was literally at a service call today where the technician that they had doing work didn't know how to fix the issue because I don't think he knew how to they didn't know how to do spoons. And so I was able to quickly do the spoon bending and fix the issue. So highly recommend, as uncomfortable, as difficult as it can be, work on the spoons and get it to where you can do it inside the piano. Again, some technicians will never do it inside the piano. They never learned, they never mastered that. And so they'll take the action out, they'll bend them outside of it, or they'll use a jig to kind of bend the spoons in a certain way. And I watch these classes and I'm just like, hey, why don't you just do them in the piano? And they're like, well, that's too hard. Get to the point where it's not that hard. That's my challenge to you all. Get to the point where you're able to do spoons. Again, the tool is pretty cut and dry. You just have to learn how to fish it in there and do it.
Yeah, I recommend the Japanese one that you're using. I think that's what it's called on shaft, the Japanese spoon bender. But
yeah,
does it change from upright to upright sometimes in the direction of the spoons from base to the middle? I know, in the base they usually go to the right, and then in the middle they go to the left. Does that ever change?
Yeah, it does. A lot of times it's section to section. So in the high treble section, it'll be one way, and it will change from piano to piano depending on what manufacturer it is.
So you're talking about how that spoon is leaning to the side so you can get to it, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I've been trying to go out one for forever. I'm like, God, I can't get it. But the thing is, on the other side, what's the easiest way to figure that out before you're sticking on the wrong side and you're getting upset?
Let me think. The easiest way to figure that out is simply go down in there and see and tap around. In one side, when you're going through this, you're gonna find that in one side, okay, I'm tapping. Oh, I hear a lot more metal that I'm hitting than the other side. And again, that's the thing. Another thing that you can do, and if you notice, this is some little lines on it. What a lot of people do, especially as they're getting started learning how to do this, is they'll put a little piece of tape. They'll be like, okay, I'm on the spoon and it's right here. I'm gonna put a little piece of tape right here. So I know I need to go down that far, roughly, before I'm gonna hit that spoon. Because otherwise it's kind of this guessing game, right?
Yeah, I saw somebody put blue tape around theirs so that.
Yeah, I've never thought about that. That's good. That's a great idea.
That's what we do.
Because that way you can remove, if you need to have a different piano where you're going to have a different distance, then you can either mark on the tape or you can just remove the tape and replace it.
Yeah, you'll get to the point where it's so muscle memory. You'll be like, okay, it's this much per, with each of the different pianos. You got to put in the work. Again, right now you have more work. Each of you have more work than business in general. So this is the time to hone those skills. Like what you're doing, Robert, is huge. You keep it going because this is the time to do it because it's so much harder. It is so much harder when your schedule gets full to go back and have time to really hone the craft because you're in invoicing mode, collecting mode, marketing mode, doing service call mode. This is a great time for you to be honing these skills.
Do you have time for another fast question?
Absolutely.
This was on a Steinway A. The hammer felt came off a hammer, and I looked it up, and the repair I did was to glue it back on and then use clamps to clamp the end and put string around it. But it changed the tone of that hammer. It softened it up quite a bit. Is there a way to fix that?
Okay, so just so that I'm kind of understanding, are you saying, Joel, that the hammer felt kind of came off the molding?
Yep, it came off the molding entirely on one side.
Entirely on one side, and now it's
I fixed.
and is it in a base?
What?
Is it in a bass note or in the treble?
It's it was the D4. It was right in the middle.
D4 right in the middle. And how much? Okay, so there's usually, it could be two things at play.
Yeah.
Depending, were there a fair amount of grooves in the piano itself?
There were on the hammers, you mean?
Yeah, on the hammers.
So the D4 wasn't too bad. Some of them were pretty grooved. The most of the hammers were really bright, and the customer said they liked the brightness, so they didn't want me to mess with it.
And so that's why this one's standing out, because it's mellower than the others, correct?
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, assuming that you got it clamped nicely, right? And it's holding. A lot of times what it is that hammer is either not traveling, it's not spaced, or it's not angled to where it's hitting the strings the right way.
Oh.
So we want it to be, that's usually what it is. It's usually cattywampus, just to the left or to the right, so it's hitting the grooves in a weird way, or it's not hitting where it should hit. 9 times out of 10, that's the issue.
Thank you.
So, yeah, that's what I would. Yeah, that's, again, it's one of those things that's also like, now this action, I just got done nervous, because no matter what I do, I'm not going to get those hammers in the exact way, and there's some fairly deep grooves. And so what that's going to do is, from note to note, we might have a change in the tone, but they didn't want to really spend any more money for hammer surfacing, so it is what it is. But that's right along with Joel's saying, is that when you replace those individual hammers or work on the individual hammers, got to make sure that you're spacing it just right so that it's hitting the strings like the other notes.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. What day is it?
Wednesday. November 6th,
right.
Election Day.
Perfect. So Friday, I think I'd like to walk you through, just because what Joel is just saying, it sounds like he's got to go back to a customer's house. Robert had to go back to a customer's house. So I think it would be good to go ahead and on Friday, we go ahead and do how to do damage control, how to kind of go into these situations, and what I do to not only make the customer happy, but make a customer for life. And there's a rhythm to it. So how does that sound?
Sounds good.
Great.
Yay.
Thanks for the picture, Stacy.
You're welcome.
All right. Have a great evening. I'll see you on Friday.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.